And I suppose with that, we can bring down the music a little bit and bring up the camera, I think. And we say good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday night edition of Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Tonight, we are in the home stretch for one of the greatest books written by the late, legendary Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Tonight, chapters 15 and 16. We continue, as we have since the beginning of the book, marching through the long chapters and welcoming everybody who stops in to enjoy a good story. As I've said in the past, this show is for you guys as a dedication to everybody who went to the library when they were in elementary school, and the librarian sat them in a semicircle, and the librarian read and occasionally showed pictures. Now, there are no pictures for the Picture of Dorian Gray, and as one person recently said, I could always have AI kind of create some. Maybe. We'll do that sometime in the near future. But we appreciate everyone stopping in tonight. Like I said, we are in the home stretch, and a lot of the bizarre details and things of Dorian Gray's life is slowly coming to light. We saw that last week when he used a little bit of blackmail to have a doctor, researcher, chemist deal with a large problem that was up in the area where the picture was. And we'll see what happens with the last few chapters here. Don't forget, we do have that new email, and I appreciate everybody who's been writing in. Thank you. JoelK_OG at protonmail.com. That's JoelK_OG at protonmail.com. I had somebody write me, and I haven't said it lately. The OG. It's there's a back in the 80s there was an idea that it was old guard or old gangster. No, it's just old guy. Thank you very much. There's a reason there's gray here. And we have a little bit of fun throughout all the stories we have. Next week, as we come towards the end of the book, we will have something very special on Labor Day. Monday, Labor Day, we will have a movie here on the channel, and it will be exclusively here to Twitch and not YouTube. As much as I love YouTube, the algorithm on YouTube has been very flaky lately, and so I'm going to start keeping the books on both channels, but the movies, I'm going to hang on and do them here and have a few more people wander in and see what Twitch is all about. I don't mean a Twitch like that, or it could be. But give me a yell. Let me know where you guys are watching from, and hope everyone is doing well. We are going to get started right away. We're going to dive into chapter 15 of the Oscar Wilde classic story, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Chapter 15. That evening, at 8:30, exquisitely dressed and wearing a large buttonhole of Parma violets, Dorian Gray was ushered into Lady Narborough's drawing room by bowing servants. His forehead was throbbing with the maddened nerves, and he felt wildly excited, but his manner as he bent over his hostess's hand was as easy and graceful as ever. Perhaps one never seemed so much at one's ease as when it had to play a part. Certainly no one was looking at Dorian Gray that night could have believed that he had passed through a tragedy as horrible as any tragedy of our age. Those finely shaped fingers could never have clutched a knife for sin, nor those smiling lips have cried out on God in goodness. He himself could not help wondering at the calm of his demeanor, and for a moment he felt keenly the terrible pleasure of a double life. It was a small party, got up rather in a hurry by Lady Narborough, who was a very clever woman, with what Lord Henry used to describe as the remains of a really remarkable ugliness. She had proved an excellent wife to one of their most tedious ambassadors, and having buried her husband properly in a marble mausoleum, which she herself designed, had married off her daughters to some rich, rather elderly men. She devoted herself now to the pleasures of French fiction, French cookery, and French esparre, when she could get it. Dorian was one of her especial favorites, and she always told him that she was extremely glad she had not met him in early life. "I know, my dear, I should have fallen madly in love with you," she used to say, "and thrown my bonnet right over the mills for your sake. It is most fortunate that you were not thought of at the time. As it was, our bonnets were so unbecoming, and the mills were so occupied in trying to raise the wind, that I never had even a flirtation with anybody. However, with all that was Narborough's fault. He was dreadfully short-sighted, and there is no pleasure in taking in a husband who never sees anything." Her guests this evening were rather tedious. The fact was, as she explained to Dorian behind every shabby fan, one of her married daughters had come up quite suddenly to stay with her, and to make matters worse, and actually brought her husband with her. "I think it is most unkind of her, my dear," she whispered. "Of course, I go and stay with them every summer after I come from Hamburg, but an old woman like me must have fresh air sometimes, and besides, I really wake them up. You don't know what an existence they lead down there. It is pure, unadulterated country life. They get up early because they have so much to do. They go to bed early because they have so little to think about. There has not been a scandal in the neighborhood since the time of Queen Elizabeth, and consequently they all fall asleep after dinner. You shan't sit by next either of them. You shall sit by me and amuse me." Dorian murmured a graceful compliment and looked around the room. Yes, it's certainly a tedious party. Two of the people he had never seen before. The others consisted of Ernest Harrowden, one of those middle-aged mediocrities of common in London clubs, who have no enemies, but are thoroughly disliked by their friends. Lady Ruxton, an overdressed woman of 47, with a hook nose, who always trying to get herself compromised, but was so peculiarly plain that it was her great disappointment that no one would ever believe anything against her. Mrs. Erlyn, a pushing nobody with delightful lisp and a Venetian red hair. Lady Alice Chapman, his hostess's daughter, a dowdy, dull girl with one of those characteristic British faces that, once seen, are never remembered, and her husband, a red-cheeked, white-whiskered creature who, like so many of his class, was under the impression that an inordinate joviality can atone for an entire lack of ideas. He was rather sorry he had come, till Lady Narborough, looking at the great ormolu-gilt clock that had sprawled in a gaudy curves on the mauve-draped mantel-shelf, exclaimed, "How horrid of Harry Wotton to be so late. I sent round to him this morning on chance, and he promised faithfully not to disappoint me." It was some consolation that Harry was to be there, and when the door opened and he heard his slow musical voice leading charm to some insecure apology, he ceased to feel bored. But at dinner he could not eat anything. Plate after plate went away untasted. Lady Narborough kept scolding him for what she called an insult to poor Adolphe, who invented the menu especially for you, and now and then Lord Henry looked across at him, wondering at the silence and abstract manner. From time to time, the butler filled the glass with champagne. He drank eagerly, and his thirst seemed to increase. "Dorian," said Lord Henry at last, as a chaufrot was being handed around, "what is the matter with you tonight? You are quite out of sorts." "I believe he is in love," cried Lady Narborough, "and that he is afraid to tell me for fear I should be jealous." "He is quite right. I certainly should." "Dear Lady Narborough," murmured Dorian, smiling, "I have not been in love for a whole week. Not, in fact, since Madame de Ferrol left town." "How you young men can fall in love with that woman," exclaimed the old woman. "I really cannot understand it." "It is simply because she remembers you when you were a little girl, Lady Narborough," said Lord Henry. "She is one who links us between your short frocks." "She does not remember my short frocks at all, Lord Henry, but I remember her very well at Vienna 30 years ago, and how she decollated she was then." "She is still decollated," he answered, taking an olive in his long fingers, "and when she is very smart gown, she looks like an edition de l'eau of the bad French novel. She is really wonderful and full of surprises. Her capacity for family affection is extraordinary. When her third husband died, her hair turned quite gold from grief." "How can you, Harry?" cried Dorian. "It is a most romantic explanation," laughed the hostess. "But her third husband, Lord Henry, don't you mean to say Farrell is the fourth?" "Certainly, Lady Narborough." "I don't believe a word of it." "Well, ask Mr. Gray. He is one of her most intimate friends." "Is it true, Mr. Gray?" "She assures me so, Lady Narborough," said Dorian. "I asked her whether, like Marguerite de Navarre, she had their hearts embalmed and hung on her girdle. She told me she didn't, because none of them had any hearts at all." "4 husbands, upon my word, that is trop de zèle." "Trop d'once, I tell her," said Dorian. "Oh, she is audacious enough for anything, my dear. And what is Farrell like?" "I don't know him." "The husbands of very beautiful women belong to the criminal class," said Lord Henry, sipping his wine. Lady Narborough hit him with her fan. "Lord Henry, I am not at all surprised that the worlds say that you are extremely wicked." "But what worlds say that?" asked Lord Henry, elevating his eyebrows. "It can only be the next world. This world and I are on excellent terms." "Everybody knows you are very wicked," cried the old lady, shaking her head. Lord Henry looked serious for some moments. "It is perfectly monstrous," he said at last, "the way people go about nowadays saying things behind one's back that are absolutely and entirely true." "Isn't he incorrigible?" cried Dorian, leaning forward in his chair. "I hope so," said his hostess, laughing. "But really, if you all worship Madame de Ferrol in such a ridiculous way, I shall have to marry again so as to be in fashion." "You will never marry again, Lady Narborough, broke in Lord Henry. "You were far too happy. When a woman marries again, it is because she detested her first husband. When a man marries again, it is because he adored his first wife. Women try their luck, men risk theirs." "Narborough wasn't perfect," cried the old lady. "If he had been, you would have not loved him, my dear lady," was the rejoinder. "Women love us for our defects if we have enough of them. They will forgive us everything, even our intellect. You will never ask me to dinner again after saying this, I'm afraid, Lady Narborough, but it is quite true." "Of course it is, Lord Henry. If we women did not love you for your defects, where would you all be? Not one of you would ever be married. You would be a set of unfortunate bachelors. Not, however, that would alter you much. Nowadays, all married men live like bachelors, and all the bachelors like married men." "Fin de la Sille," murmured Lord Henry. "Fin de globe," answered the hostess. "I wish it were fin de globe," said Dorian with a sigh. "Life is a great disappointment." "Oh, my dear," cried Lady Narborough, putting on her gloves, "don't tell me you have exhausted life. When a man says that, one knows that life has exhausted him. Lord Henry is very wicked, and I sometimes wish that I had been. But you are made to be good. You look so good. I must find you a nice wife. Lord Henry, don't you think that Mr. Gray should get married?" "I am always telling him that so, Lady Narborough," said Lord Henry with a bow. "Well, we must look out for a suitable match for him. I shall go through Debrett carefully tonight and draw out a list of all the eligible young ladies." "With their ages, Lady Narborough?" asked Dorian. "Of course, with their ages, slightly edited. But nothing must be done in a hurry. I want it to be what the Morning Post calls a suitable alliance. And I want you both to be happy." "What nonsense people talk about happy marriages," exclaimed Lord Henry. "A man can be happy with any woman, as long as he does not love her." "Ah, what a cynic you are," cried the old lady, pushing back her chair and nodding to Lady Ruxton. "You must come and dine with me soon again. You are really most admirable tonic, much better than what Sir Andrew prescribed for me. You must tell me what people you would like to meet, though I want it to be a delightful gathering." "I like men who have a future and women who have a past," he answered. "Or do you think that would make it a petticoat party?" "I fear so," she said, laughing as she stood up. "1,000 pardons, my dear Lady Ruxton," she added. "I didn't see you had finished your cigarette." "Never mind, Lady Narborough. I smoke a great deal too much. I'm going to limit myself for the future." "Pray don't, Lady Ruxton," said Lord Henry. "Moderation is a fatal thing. Enough is as bad as a meal. More than enough is as good as a feast." Lady Ruxton glanced at him curiously. "You must come and explain that to me some afternoon, Lord Henry. It sounds a fascinating theory," she murmured, as she swept out of the room. "Now, mind you don't stay too long over your politics and scandal," cried Lady Narborough from the door. "If you do, we are sure to squabble upstairs." The men laughed, and Mr. Chapman got up solemnly from the foot of the table and came up to the top. Dorian Gray changed his seat and went and sat by Lord Henry. Mr. Chapman began to talk in a loud voice about the situation in the House of Commons. He guffawed at his adversaries. The word doctrinaire words seemed too full of terror to the British mind, reappeared from time to time between his explosions. An alterative prefix served as an ornament of oratory. He hoisted the Union Jack on its pinnacles of thought. The inherited stupidity of the race, sound English common sense, he jovial termed it, was shown to be proper bulwark for society. A smile curved Lord Henry's lips, and he turned around and looked at Dorian. "Are you better, my dear fellow?" he asked. "You seemed rather out of sorts at dinner." "I am quite well, Harry. I'm tired, that is all." "You were charming last night. The little Duchess is quite devoted to you. She tells me she is going down to Selby. She has promised to come on the 20th. Is Monmouth to be there too?" "Oh, yes, Henry. He bores me dreadfully, almost as much as he bores her. She is very clever, too clever for a woman. She lacks the indefinable charm of weakness. It is the feet of clay that make the gold of the image precious. Her feet are very pretty, but they are not feet of clay. White porcelain feet, if you like. They have been through the fire, and what fire does not destroy, it hardens. She has had experiences." "How long has she been married?" asked Dorian. "An eternity, she tells me. I believe, according to the peerage, it is 10 years, but 10 years with Monmouth must have been like eternity, with some time thrown in." "Who else is coming?" "Oh, the Willoughbys, Lord Rugby and his wife, our hostess Geoffrey Clouston, the usual set. I have asked Lord Grochen." "I like him," said Lord Henry. "A great many people don't, but I find him charming. He atones for being occasionally somewhat overdressed by always being absolutely overeducated. He is very modern type." "I don't know if he will be able to come, Harry. He may have to go to Monte Carlo with his father." "Ah, what a nuisance people are. Try and make him come, by the way, Dorian. Dorian, are you off rather early last night? You left before 11. What did you do afterwards? Did you go straight home?" Dorian glanced at him hurriedly and frowned. "No, Harry," he said at last. "I did not go home until nearly 3. Did you go to the club?" "Yes," he answered. Then he bit his lip. "No, I don't mean that. I didn't go to the club. I walked about. I forgot what I did. How inquisitive you are, Harry. You always want to know what one has been doing. I always want to forget what I have been doing. I came in at 2:30, if you wish to know the exact time. I had left my latchkey at home, and my servant had let me in. If you want any corroborative evidence on the subject, you can ask him." Lord Henry shrugged his shoulders. "My dear fellow, if you cared. Let us go upstairs to the drawing room. No sherry, thank you, Mr. Chapman. Something has happened to you, Dorian. Tell me what it is. You are not yourself tonight." "Don't mind me, Harry. I am irritable and out of temper. I shall come around and see you tomorrow, or the next day. Make my excuses to Lady Narborough. I shan't go upstairs. I shall go home. I must go home." "All right, Dorian. I dare say I shall see you tomorrow at tea time. The Duchess is coming." "I will try to be there, Harry," he said, leaving the room. As he drove back to his own house, he was conscious that there was a sense of terror he thought as he strangled had he come back to him. Lord Henry's casual questioning had him lose the nerve he had for the moment, and he wanted his nerve still. Things that were dangerous had to be destroyed. He winced. He hated the idea of even touching them. Yet it had to be done. He realized that, and when he had locked the door to the library, he opened the secret press into which he had thrust Basil Hallward's coat and bag. A huge fire was blazing. He piled another log on it. The smell of the singeing clothes and burning leather was horrible. He took him 3/4 of an hour to consume everything. At the end, he felt faint and sick, and having lit some Algerian pastilles in a pierced copper brazier, he bathed his hands and forehead with cool musk-scented vinegar. Suddenly he started. His eyes grew strangely bright, and gnawed nervously at his underlip. Between two of the windows stood a large Florentine cabinet made out of ebony and inlaid with ivory and blue lapis. He watched it as though it was something that could fascinate and make afraid, as though it held something that he longed for and almost loathed. He breathed quickened. His breath quickened. A mad craving came over him. He lit a cigarette and then threw it away. His eyelids drooped till the long fringed eyelashes almost touched his cheek. But he still watched the cabinet. At last he got up from the sofa on which he had been lying, went over to it, and having unlocked it, touched some hidden spring. A triangular drawer passed slowly out. His fingers moved instinctively towards it, dipped in, and closed on something. It was a small Chinese box of black and gold dust lacquer, elaborately wrought, the sides patterned with curved waves, and silken cords hung with round crystals and tasseled in plaited metal threads. He opened it. Inside was a green paste, waxy in luster, the odor curiously heavy and persistent. He hesitated for some moments, with strangely immobile smile upon his face, then shivering through the atmosphere of the room was terribly hot. He drew himself up and glanced at the clock. It was 20 minutes to 12. He put the box back, shutting the cabinet doors as he did so, and went into his bedroom. As midnight was striking bronze blows upon the dusky air, Dorian Gray, dressed commonly and with a muffler wrapped around his throat, crept quietly out of his house. In Bond Street he found a hansom with a good horse. He hailed it, and in a low, grave voice to the driver gave an address. The man shook his head. "It is too far for me," he muttered. "Here's a sovereign for you," said Dorian. "You shall have another if you drive fast." "All right, sir," answered the man. "You will be there in an hour." And after his fare got in, he turned his horse around and drove rapidly towards the river. Give me a second, guys. My voice is cracking again. 'Tis the season for dust in the air. Chapter 16. A cold rain began to fall, and the blurred street lamps looked ghastly in the dripping mist. The public houses were just closing, and dim men and women were clustering in broken groups around their doors. From some of the bars came the sound of horrible laughter. In others, drunkards brawled and screamed. Lying back in the hansom cab, with his hat pulled over his forehead, Dorian Gray watched with listless eyes the sordid shame of the city. And now and then he repeated to himself the words that Lord Henry had said to him on the first day they had met. To cure the soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. Yes, that was the secret. He had often tried and would try again now. There were opium dens where one could buy oblivion, Dens of horror where the memory of old sins could be destroyed by the madness of sins that were new. The moon hung low in the sky with a yellow skull. From time to time, a huge misshapen cloud stretched a long arm across and hid it. The gas lamps grew fewer, and the streets more narrow and gloomy. Once the man lost his way and had to drive back half a mile. The steam rose from the horse as it splashed up the puddles. The side windows of the hansom were clogged with gray flanneled mist. To cure the soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. How the words rang into his ears. His soul certainly was sick to death. Was it true that the senses could be cured? Innocent blood had been spilt. What could atone for that? For that there was no atonement. But no, forgiveness was impossible. Forgetfulness was possible still, and was determined to forget, to stamp out things, to crush it as one would crush the adder that had stung one. Indeed, what right had Basil to have spoken to him as he had done? Who had made him a judge over others? He had said things that were dreadful, horrible, not to be endured. On and on plowed the hansom, going slower, it seemed to him, at each step. He thrust up the trap and called to the man to drive faster. The hideous hunger for opium began to gnaw at him. His throat burned, and his delicate hands twitched nervously. He struck at the horse madly with a stick. The driver laughed and whipped him. He laughed in answer, and the man was silent. The way seemed interminable, and the streets like a black web of some sprawling spider. The monotony became unbearable, and as the thick mist, he felt afraid. Then, as they passed by lonely brick fields, the fog was lighter here, and he could see the strange bottle-shaped kilns with their orange, fan-like tongues of flame. A dog barked as they went by, and far away in the darkness some wandering seagull screamed. The horse stumbled into a rut, then swerved aside and broke into a gallop. After some time they left the clay road and rattled again over rough paven streets. Most of the windows were dark, but now and then fantastic shadows were silhouetted against some lamp-lit blind. He watched them curiously. They moved like monstrous marionettes and made gestures like live things. He hated them. A dull rage was in his heart. As they turned a corner, a woman yelled something at them from the open door, and two men ran after the hansom for 100 yards. The driver beat at them with his whip. It is said that passion makes one think in a circle. Certainly, with a hideous iteration, the bitten lips of Dorian Gray shaped and reshaped those subtle words that dealt with soul and sense, till he found in them the full expression, as it were, of his mood, and justified, by intellectual approval, passions that, without such with justification, would still have dominated his temper. From cell to cell of his brain crept the one thought, the wild desire to live, most terrible of all man's appetites, quickened into force each trembling nerve and fiber. Ugliness, that had once been hateful to him because it made things real, became dear to him now for that very reason. Ugliness was the reality. The coarse brawl, the loathsome den, the crude violence of disordered life, The very vileness of thief and outcast were more vivid in their intense actuality of impressions than all the gracious shapes of art, the dreamy shadows of song. They were what he needed for forgetfulness. In 3 days, he would be free. Suddenly the man drew up with a jerk at the top of the dark lane. Over low roofs and jagged chimney stacks of the houses rose the black masts of ships. Wreaths of white mist clung like ghostly sails to the yards. "Somewhere about there, sir, ain't it?" he asked huskily through the trap. Dorian started and peered around. "This will do," he answered, and having got out hastily, giving the driver the extra fare he had promised, he walked quickly in the direction of the quay. Here and there, lantern gleamed at the stern of some huge merchantman. The light shook and splintered in the puddles. The red glare came from an outward bound steamer that was coaling. A slimy pavement looked like a wet mackintosh. He hurried onwards, then the left, glancing back now and then to see if he was being followed. In about 7 or 8 minutes, he reached a small shabby house that was wedged in between two gaunt factories. In one of the top windows stood a lamp. He stopped and gave it a peculiar knock. After a little time, he heard steps in the passage, and the chain being unhooked. The door opened silently, and he went in without saying a word to a squat, misshapen figure that flattened itself into the shadows as he passed. At the end of the hall hung a tattered green curtain that swayed and shook in the gusty wind which had followed him in from the street. He dragged it aside and entered a long, low room which looked as if it had once been a third-rate dancing saloon. Shrill, flaring gas jets, dulled and distorted by the fly-blown mirrors that faced them, were arranged around the walls. Greasy reflectors of ribbed tin backs of them, making quavery discs of light. The floor was covered with ochre-colored sawdust, trampled here and there into mud, and stained with dark rings of spilled liquor. Some Malays were crouching at the little charcoal stove, while playing with bone counters and showing their white teeth as they chattered. In one corner, with his head buried in his arms, a sailor sprawled over the table, and by his tawdry painted bar that ran across one complete side of the room, 2 haggard women mocking an old man who was brushing the sleeve of his coat with an expression of disgust. "He thinks he's got red ants on him," laughing at one of them as Dorian passed by. The man looked at her in terror and began to whimper. At the end of the room, there was a little staircase leading to a darkened chamber. As Dorian hurried up it 3 rickety steps, the heavy odor of opium met him. He heaved a deep breath, and his nostrils quivered with pleasure. When he entered, a young man with smooth yellow hair, who was bending over a lamp lighting a long, thin pipe, looked up at him and nodded in hesitating manner. "You are here, Adrian," murmured Dorian. "Where else would I be?" he answered listlessly. "None of the chaps will speak to me now. I thought you had left England." "Darlington is not going to do anything. My brother paid the bill last night. George doesn't speak to me either. I don't care," he added with a sigh. "As long as one has this stuff, one doesn't want friends. I think I've had too many friends." Dorian winced and looked around at the grotesque things that lay in such fantastic postures on the ragged mattresses. The twisted limbs, the gaping mouths, the staring lustreless eyes fascinated him. He knew in what strange heavens they were suffering, and what dull hells were teaching them the secret of something new. They were better off than he was. He was prisoned in thought. Memory, like a horrible malady, was eating his soul away. From time to time, he seemed to see the eyes of Basil Hallward looking at him. Yet he felt he could not stay. The presence of Adrian Singleton troubled him. He wanted to be where no one knew who he was. He wanted to escape from himself. "I'm going on to another place," he said after a pause. "On the wharf?" "Yes." "That mad cat is sure to be there. They won't have her in this place now." Dorian shrugged his shoulders. "I'm sick of women who love one. Women who hate one are much more interesting. Besides, the stuff is better." "Much the same. I like it better. Come and have a drink. I must have something." "I don't want anything," murmured the young man. "Never mind." Adrian Singleton rose up wearily and followed Dorian to the bar. A half-caste in ragged turban and shabby ulster grinned a hideous greeting as he thrust a bottle of brandy and 2 tumblers in front of them. The women sidled up and began to chatter. Dorian turned his back to them and said something in a low voice to Adrian Singleton. A crooked smile, like a Malay's crease, withered across his face of one of the women. "We are very proud tonight," she sneered. "For God's sakes, don't talk to me," cried Dorian, stamping his foot on the ground. "What do you want? Money? Here it is. Don't ever talk to me again." 2 red sparks flashed for a moment in the women's sodden eyes, then flickered out and left them dull and glazed. She tossed her head and raked the coins off the counter with greedy fingers. Her companion watched her enviously. "It's no use," sighed Adrian Singleton. "I don't care to go back. What does it matter? I'm quite happy here." "You will write to me if you want anything, won't you?" said Dorian after a pause. "Perhaps." "Good night, then." "Good night," answered the young man, passing up the steps and wiping his parched mouth with a handkerchief. Dorian walked to the door, and with a look of pain on his face. As he drew the curtain aside, a hideous laugh broke from the painted lips of the women who had taken his money. "There goes the devil's bargain," she hiccuped in a hoarse voice. "Curse you," he answered. "Don't call me that." She snapped her fingers. "Prince Charming is what you like to be called, ain't it?" she yelled after him. The drowsy sailor leapt to his feet as she spoke and looked wildly around. The sound of shuddering of the hall door fell on his ear. He rushed out as if in pursuit. Dorian Gray hurried along the quay through the drizzling rain. His meeting with Adrian Singleton had strangely moved him, and he wondered if the ruin of that young life was really to be laid at his door, as Basil Hallward had said to him with such infamy of insult. He bit his lip, and for a few seconds his eyes grew sad. And yet, after all, what did it matter to him? One's days were too brief to take the burden of another's errors on one's shoulders. Each man lived his own life and paid his own price for living it. The only pity was one had to pay so often for a single fault. One had only pay over and over again, indeed. In her dealings with man, destiny never closed her accounts. There are moments, psychologists tell us, When the passion for sin, or for what the world would call sin, so dominates a nature that every fiber of the body, every cell of the brain, seems to be instinct with fearful impulses. Men and women at such moments lose their freedom of their will. They move their terrible end as automatons move. Choice is taken from them, and conscience is either killed or, if it lives at all, lives but to give rebellion to fascination and disobedience its charm. For all sins, as theologians weary not to remind us, are sins of disobedience. When what high spirit, what morning star of evil fell from heaven, it is as a rebel that he fell. Callous, concentrated on evil, with stained mind and soul hungry for rebellion, Dorian Gray hastened on, quickening his steps as he went, but as he darted aside into the dim archway that had served him often as a shortcut to the ill-famed place where he was going, he felt himself suddenly seized from behind, and before he had time to defend himself, he was thrust back against the wall with a brutal hand around his throat. He struggled madly for life, and by terrible effort wrenched the tightening fingers away. In a second he heard the click of a revolver and saw the gleam of a polished barrel pointing straight at his head, and the dusky form of a short, thick-set man facing him. "What do you want?" he gasped. "Keep quiet," said the man. "If you stir, I shoot you." "Are you mad? What have I done to you?" "You wrecked the life of Sybil Vane," was the answer, "and Sybil Vane was my sister. She killed herself, I know it. Her death is at your door. I swore I would kill you in return. For years I have sought you. I had no clue, no trace. The two people who could have described you are dead. I knew nothing of you but the pet name she used to call you. I heard it tonight by chance. Make your peace with God, for tonight you are going to die." Dorian Gray grew sick with fear. "I never knew her," he stammered. "I never heard of her. You are mad. You had better confess your sins, for as sure as I am James Vane, you are going to die." There was a horrible moment. Dorian did not know what to do or say. "Down on your knees," growled the man. "Give you 1 minute to make your peace, no more. I go on board tonight for India, and I must do my job first. 1 minute. That's all." Dorian's arms fell to his side. Paralyzed with terror, he did not know what to do. Suddenly, a wild hope flashed across his brain. "Stop," he cried. "How long ago is it since your sister died? Quick, tell me." 18 years, said the man. "Why do you ask me? What do years matter?" 18 years, laughed Dorian Gray, with a touch of triumph in his voice. 18 years. Set me under the lamp and look at my face." James Vane hesitated for a moment, not understanding what was meant. Then he seized Dorian Gray, dragged him from the archway. Dim and wavering as it was wind-blown night, and yet served to show him the hideous horror, as it seemed, into which he had fallen, for the face of the man he had sought to kill had all bloomed of boyhood, all the unstained purity of youth. He seemed little more than a lad of 20 summers, hardly older, if older indeed at all, than his sister had been when he had parted so many years ago. It was obvious that this was not the man who destroyed his life. He loosened his hold and reeled back. My God," he cried, "and I would have murdered you." Dorian Gray drew his long breath. "You have been on the brink of committing a terrible crime, my man," he said, looking at him sternly. "Let this be a warning to you not to take vengeance into your own hands." "Forgive me, sir," muttered James Vane. "I was deceived. A chance word that I heard in a damn den sent me on the wrong track. You had better go home and put that pistol away, or you may get into trouble," said Dorian, turning on his heel, going slowly down the street. James Vane stood on the pavement in horror. He was trembling from head to foot. After a while, a black shadow that had been creeping along the dripping wall moved out into the light and came close to him with stealthy footsteps. He felt a hand lay on his arm. He looked around with a start. It was one of the women who had been drinking at the bar. "Why didn't you kill him?" she hissed, putting a haggard face quite close to his. "I knew you were following him when you rushed out of Daly's. You fool, you could have killed him. He has lots of money, and he's as bad as bad." "He's not the man I'm looking for," he answered, "and I want no man's money. I want a man's life. The man whose life I want must be nearly 40 now. This one is little more than a boy. Thank God I have not got his blood on my hands." The woman gave a bitter laugh. "Little more than a boy," she sneered. "Why, man, it's nigh on 18 years since Prince Charming made me what I am." "You lie," cried James Vane. She raised up her hand to the heavens. "Before God, I am telling the truth," she cried. "Before God? Strike me dumb if it ain't so. He is the worst one to come here. They say he has sold himself to the devil for a pretty face. It's nigh on 18 years since I met him. He hasn't changed much since then. I have, though," she added with a sickly leer. "You swear this?" "I swear it," came a hoarse echo in her flat mouth. "But don't give me away to him," she whined. "I am afraid of him. Let me have some money for my night's lodging." He broke from her with an oath and rushed to the corner of the street, but Dorian Gray had disappeared. When he looked back, the woman had vanished also. And that are chapters 15 and 16 of the Oscar Wilde classic, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Things are heating up for Mr. Dorian Gray. He came close this night to finally being caught by the brother of Sybil Vane. And what he didn't know is the woman that followed him knew exactly who he was. Hope you guys are enjoying the stories, enjoying the chapters, and enjoying the story. As I mentioned to you in the past, it is originally a 13-chapter story that was expanded into 20 chapters because Mr. Oscar Wilde got onto the wrong side of the law in England at the time. And he expanded it from 13 to 20 chapters. And we are headlong into the last of the few chapters. We've got 4 chapters left. 2 next week and 2 the week after. By the time we come to Labor Day here in the U.S., we will also be having a movie on Monday, Labor Day. And I will be talking about that on either Thursday night show or next week's show here. Or both. If you guys get a chance, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. I love having people stop by if they're enjoying the stories. And remember, we do a ton of different stories here on the channel. We are in the midst of reading The Picture of Dorian Gray, a great story by legendary author Oscar Wilde. Poet, playwright, scholar, the man who took up and created a lot of great plays and short stories and novel. A very good novel that we're reading. By the way, don't forget, next week, we continue as we drive ourselves towards chapter 20, the final chapter. Next week, chapters 17 and 18, here on Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. I'm glad you guys are stopping by to watch the show. Thank you to everybody who stops in on a regular basis. I appreciate every one of you. I really do. Both here and on YouTube. Thank you guys very much. Before we go, before we walk out of here, we do, like we do on the Thursday night show, we do a final quote for the night. And tonight, the thoughts of a brave, small hero in a classic adventure, classic drama, classic fantasy adventure. From The Lord of the Rings, a hero, Samwise Gamgee. But in the end, it is only a passing thing. This shadow, even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Samwise Gamgee, The Lord of the Ring, The Two Towers. But in the end, it is only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Good words. With the way craziness is going on out there in the world, not only here in the U.S., but around the world, let's keep that thought for a brighter day. It's time to go. I appreciate everyone who stopped by. Thank you very much for stopping by. This is Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Every single Sunday night, live here on Twitch and on YouTube as well. We're going to get going. Be well, be safe, be kind. Appreciate everyone. Like I said, it's nice to have you guys stop in. We've got announcements next week and this Thursday for Labor Day and for the next book we will be doing. I'm excited to let you know what we got coming. Take care, all. Be well, be safe, be kind. Look out for each other. We all need to be a part of our friends, our families' lives. Don't forget they were part of yours when you were growing up. Don't forget to say hello to family and friend once in a while. Time to go. Take care. We'll see you all next week for chapters 17 and 18 of the Picture of Dorian Gray here on Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Bye, guys.